But the pit feeling was one of unity, and you were all together. We were clannish. Yeah, I think we were clannish in a way. Sometimes I wake up and I've been thinking of the pit as clear as crystal. Some incident, however trivial, it's flashed back in my mind. Having spent 36 years down there, you can't forget it. It's a lifetime. It was my life.
I had money in the store, you know, being a careful sort of a chap, and I went and drew a pound a week out every week, and I also drew a pound out for a good friend of mine. I let him have a pound every week until the strike finished. But mind, he paid us back. He paid us back.
Well, I'll have a song at Only Piece of Cocky, Perry.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. In the quaint old-fashioned cottage, at the closing of the day, her mother watched her little boy, so busy at his play. A workbox he had emptied on the old oak rocking chair, as eagerly her fingers searched amongst the treasures there. A tattered piece of cloth he gazed at with wondering eyes. Oh, Mommy, what is this, he lisps, and fondly she replies, only a piece of khaki, treasure it, lad, with pride. Part of your daddy's tunic, who like a hero died, fighting for home and freedom for mothers and little ones. Only a piece of khaki your daddy wore at Mons.
Friday night, there was a little laddie standing at the pit gates, and he asked, it was a dark night, he asked me could he accompany me to Bertley, a bit afraid of the dark, you see, and asked him who he was. He says, I've left school today, the Catholic school at Bertley, and I've been to the colliery office to get a job, see. He says, my mother's a widow, and I can get a job at the pit. So the manager just told us that I can start on Monday. Well, I says, come on, Sonny, and I said, you can go halfway. When I go on up Dighton Banks, you'll get along to the huts where he was living in Bertley. And canny little lad he was. So anyway, I was chairman of the lodge, and on the Tuesday following, never thought any more about it, a man came from the pit to tell us that I had to go straight to the pit. There'd been a fatal accident, and he didn't know who it was. He just said there'd been a fatal accident. Well, you know, they allows the pit out then, you see. So off I went. I left me breakfast and went to Buick Main Pit. It's about 1.5 miles or 2 miles. And here's this little lad lying in the ambulance house, head off top. He'd been caught with the gorder, and he was killed outright. Second day down the pit, at the Catholic school on the Friday afternoon, and got his leaving certificate at 14, killed, eh? Nice state of affairs, and a widow to start with from the First World War.
What does it mean to be a pitman? What does it mean to trudge through conditions like these at the dead of night to a hard shift underground? What's this idea of working class solidarity that people talk about? Why is it important to know? This is the grave of Tommy Heaven. In a very real sense, the idea of working class solidarity in County Durham started with him. He led the first great struggles of the Durham miners in 1831 and 1832. He left an idea of what it meant to be a miner: unity or oppression, solidarity or exploitation, working class solidarity. In the pit villages of County Durham, that came to be something more than a phrase, and Tommy Heaven's defeats something more than a lost cause.
Whatever else, it's been a struggle about men's dignity and a fight to win their self-respect. By the end of the 19th century, coal was king. The Durham Miners' Union rode the wave of prosperity with the owners. The Durham mining town and the Durham mining village emerged as a distinctive kind of community. The pit, the union, the club, the chapel. Out of desperately hard physical labour and a job requiring independence, pride and skill, emerged a special type of worker, the Durham pitman, and with it, a family life to match.
And in those days, I only had £2 for my wages when the children were very young. But in those days, you put your order in at the co-op and they were delivered to your door. And probably I only spent 15 shillings, but you seemed to get such a lot of goods for the 15 shillings, you know. And then the little bit that was left, you bought your meat for the weekend with the 5 shillings out of your pound. And the other pound seemed to go, you paid your insurance, gave me husband a few shillings pocket money, and left about 5 shillings to start the Monday. And I can truthfully say I was never without any money in my purse, even though it was only a few coppers on the Friday.
3 brothers of us working at the mine, you know, and we used to hurry home to see who could get into the bath tin first to bath. The first one got the cleanest water, of course.
Well, when we were first married, I was rather shy, and the first day I had the big pan filled, you know, and I had the bath out and the soap in a little dish and a loofah that we had in those days, a long loofah, rather rough on the back. And when my husband used to kneel down and do his head and the top half, and then try himself, he couldn't do his back. Well, this day when he did the top half, he turned round to me and he said, "Now Luke," he said, "if you go out now, you'll have to go out every day until you can face seeing me with just these little short flappers, as they were called in those days. They were just a little, like a V shape that the men wore.
When they were working? When
they were working, and he kept them on while he was getting bathed. So the first day he said, "You'll have to wash me back." So he said, "You can either close your eyes, but I'll have to get bathed." So I washed his back, and he's tall man, you know, and I was reaching up and washed his back and dried it vigorously. And he stepped into the bath. I think I looked towards the wall, you know, while he was doing that, but I just got used to it. But if anyone came in, strangers of course, we had to say, well, the dad's going to have his bath, and they'd probably go out while he washed the bottom half of himself.
Many of the mining communities were small. All of them were isolated. The company owned the mine, and with it the houses, and frequently the shops and public buildings. The manager often had the power of a lord over his serfs, and was for all practical purposes squire, lawyer, judge and jury.
Well, when I got up to be a man, I used to listen to my mother, and my mother used to tell us the experiences she had, you see, and man, it would make your heart bleed, because the manager of the colliery, he had the same stand as the Prince of Wales. You daresn't do nothing in that village without you had to go to the colliery office and be fined. If there was any trouble on a weekend, sometimes the miners would get indulged in a little bit of trouble, you know, and whatever they did, they would get a letter to say that attend the colliery office. Now, the union meetings was held in the station. Now, I was only a young fellow when I started to go to the meetings. And believe me, the boss knew, and then he had his tale tellers, he had his touts that used to go to the lodge meetings, you see. And the boss got to know everything that transpired.
To start with, not all the miners' leaders were militant. For much of the 19th century, the coal industry was expanding and the miners weren't too badly paid, so many of their leaders were willing to cooperate with the coal owners.
These are the men, Crawford and the rest, who were the leaders of the Durham Miners Association. They and their ideas ruled unchallenged from the foundation of the Permanent Union in 1869. Religious men, earnest Victorian moralists, the harmony of labour and capital. Benjamin Disraeli talked about the English working class as being angels in marble. Well, here they are. But then the high tide of Victorian prosperity and optimism ebbed and left them high and dry. By the turn of the century, a new gospel was being preached around the county, socialism. Solidarity took on a political complexion, and with the birth of the Labour Party, the idea of the class war came to Durham.
I was on the parish council 8 years, when I was just young at Berwick, Maine, and then when I came to this pit, they nominated me for the Rural District Council at Chesley Street. And I fought the manager. It was a hard fight, was it not? Yeah, but it was a bitter fight that. They own him, you see, and he's tactful. He had whiz drives on at night for the women in the village, the voters, you see. Well, I couldn't afford any whiz drives or nothing, but I had the lodge behind me, and I got the pub box out. Man, it was a dirty fight. By God, was it not? And I beat him. And the hurrier went up, you know, and they had me on the floor. So he had to say a few kind words to the registrar, and he mentioned it was the dirtiest fight he'd ever been in, and he'd never won again. Well, I said, here, see? And I had to second it, you see?
During the First World War, the mines were taken from the owners and run by the state. Against the recommendation of a government commission, the mines were handed back to the owners. But the great days of coal were over. The dole queues in the pit villages lengthened. The endless years of depression had begun.
I'll never forget the 26th strike. I've got no place for the owners. I never will. Not till the breath goes out of me. I didn't care about nationalisation of the mines or what. My personal spite was against these fellas for the tricks they did. You would think they weren't human. They weren't human actions that they would take. You're no use to us. We'll send for you when we want you. Men walking the roads, couldn't get a job.
Towards the end of we were practically starving, everyone in the village. There was only the school children that had a chance then, because they used to go to the soup kitchens, you see, and they used to, but if you were working, there was no allowance that way. And if it hadn't been for the cooperative society at the time, I can remember my mother telling me that that was the thing that practically kept us going. You could get vouchers for food on conditions that you were paid back after the strike. And that's what we did. But I can remember many a time when we went without. I can always remember when my mother made some loaves of bread with bran that we used to keep for the rabbit. And my sisters objected to the rabbit being killed to eat. So we thought we'd give it away and say that it had run away. And we give it away to another miner, and he had the rabbit pie and we had the bran that was left. And we lived on that and just turnips and potatoes that we got from the garden. And the woman in the house, she would feed the rest of the family before she would feed herself. And therefore, we could see her going down. In fact, if the strike had lasted much longer, I think my mother would have been the next one to have gone. When the means test started to come on, I was just getting 9pence a week. So I thought, no, I would get away down and work in the south somewhere. So I went to the unemployment exchange and told them I would like to get away, and they sent me to a training centre. And I was there for 3 months, and then I went and worked in the tunnels for McAlpin. It was the West Middlesex Sewerage Scheme. And they thought we were foreigners. And I can always remember the tea lad coming one day and he said, my mother's not pleased about you men being here, you know. You're taking the work away from the men in Middlesex. You've come down at a working for less money and things like that. And she says, you Taffies and Geordies, you're foreigners, you know, and that's why you shouldn't come down here.
Solidarity was sacred. A man who broke the code could expect little mercy. Retribution for blacklegs was crude and harsh.
You know what? I felt sorry for a man that was killed, a blackleg at Buick, Maine. He was killed, they were trying a new handless rope, and he got squashed, killed, and he had no place for unions. And his widow didn't get the shillings off the note. And that poor woman, she died broken-hearted. Her family's lads in Berkeley today. That poor woman, he wouldn't have nothing to do with unions, because he blamed the unions for the mess we're in the 26. Arnie Goffrey, canny fella. And he got killed. And that poor widow, you know, that would have helped her with her family, the shillings off the notes. He not being a member of the Durham Miners Union and the Miners Lodge, the men says, no, we have no place for him. And that poor widow had to be sacrificed there. Sad things, you know. The hard things to do, but that's what we had to do to try and keep the peace with the members we had concerned.
We used to, whenever there was an accident, the news used to spread, all the bands used to come, oh, there's been an accident. We all used to run. And you used to see all the men black out of the pit that hadn't had time to be washed. And they'd be carrying this little, like a stretcher, but more of a bogey, with either the dead man or the sick man, the injured man, on it. And they were just covered over by a grey blanket, and we all used to run, you know, I know it was terrible, but to us children, we just thought it was a procession to follow, and we used to follow it and see where it was going to. And if it was going to any of the streets near where we lived, there was great consternation in case it would be our dar, as we used to call it, our dar in those days, me dar. And if your dar was down the pit at that time when the accident happened, there was more likelihood that it could have been your dar, you know.
Many of the pits were owned by families to whom Durham was more foreign than Monte Carlo, and to whom its villages and towns were psychologically and socially more remote than Bermuda. But some local families had been coal owners for generations. Lord Londonderry, a name to be conjured with in Seaham Harbour, and not unknown in Stanley. This is Wynyard Park, the home of the Londonderrys. Lady Helena Walsh remembers her childhood here.
Of course, you see, we didn't live all the year round at Wynyard, because in the summer and early summer we were in Ireland, and then we used to go to Scotland in the shooting season. And then we went to Wynyard in the autumn and for Christmas, and then we used to go to Londonderry House, and then back again to Ireland. So it was sort of the same thing every year. The staff was well over 30. There were 7 in the pantry, 6 in the housemaids, 3 in the still room, and 6 in the kitchen. That's quite apart from the nursery and sort of odd men and things like that. And that was only the indoor staff, nothing to do with the outside staff, which would have been absolutely enormous.
Men who live in Durham say that the Londonderrys, as coal owners go, were better than most. But the social life of Wynyard Park and the social life of the pit villages across the fields were worlds apart.
The footmen, there were 3 footmen, and they used to dress in state livery when there were more than 15 people there for dinner. And I've been told that at Christmas time there were usually 30 people in the dining room, and there were nearly always 5 courses for dinner, and you always ate them off this beautiful gold plate, which is lovely. And then, of course, there was always the wonderful servants' ball they gave, and I think that was in Christmas week, where they had this dance called the ribbon dance, which I'd never known danced anywhere else. It was a most extraordinary dance, but the point of it was that my mother and father met every person in the room.
And what happened at the ribbon dance?
Well, the ribbon dance was, my father used to dance with Mrs. Harris, who was the cook, and she was in the family for 60 years. And my mother used to dance with the butler, and you each held a ribbon in your left hand with your partner, and you shook hands with the people you were dancing with, and you turned, as you were shaking hands, you turned the circle, and then you passed the ribbon over their heads and went on to the next couple. And so it went on like that all the time, till it got right round the whole room.
When the Depression came in the 1930s, were there any economies made in the household?
Yes, well, it was, very bad depression, but one economy, which is really rather funny, was that my nanny's Daily Mail was stopped.
By 1947, the long struggle for nationalisation was won. The owners were compensated to the tune of roughly £388 million. The exact amount has never been made public. The Londonderrys alone received about £1 million. Nor were the fruits of nationalisation denied to the miner. In 1969, his retirement pension was raised to 150 new pence. After a lifetime in the pits, 30 bob a week.
As me and me marrow was gunning to walk, we met with the devil, it wasn't a dark. I opened me pick, it been in and eating a out of his horns and his head and his feet. Follow the horses, Johnny me laddie, follow them through me canny lad, oh. Follow the horses, Johnny me laddie, oh lad lay away me canny lad, oh. As me and me marrow was putting a tram, the light went out and me marrow went wrong. Ye would have laughed to see the fine game, old Nick took me marrow, but I took the tram. Follow the horses, Johnny me laddie, follow them through me canny lad, oh. Follow the horses, Johnny me laddie, hey lad lay away me canny lad, oh. Oh marrow, no where's the bean? Driving adrift for the low steam, driving adrift for the low steam. Hard up the lake, marrow deal stoop the areen. Follow the horses, Johnny me laddie, follow them through me canny lad, oh. Follow the horses, Johnny me laddie, oh lad lie away me canny lad, oh.